me, and I'm very happy to do it. And people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I got that?
Gentlemen, we're going to get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers. I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million. Show us your tax returns. I went, you'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good. And we have I built up.
I'm asking you a specific question, which is.
Let me tell you.
I understand all that. I understand all that. Mr. President, I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So not
millions of dollars. And you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you, first, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for the building. We get tax credits like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened.
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes, on the money a school teacher makes, is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And we're going to
oh boy, that's a smart thing to run.
And make sure that we invest in the people who in fact need the help. People out there need help.
But why do you do it over in the last 25 years?
Because you are president screwing things up.
You were a senator.
One of the worst presidents America has ever had.
Oh, please.
In 47 months, I've done more than you've done in 47 years.
Oh!
Fixing the broken military that you gave me, taking care of your
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward, because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what is the analysis done by Wall Street firms. It points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs in business. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth, because it would be about buying American. That we have to, the federal government spends $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, we eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500, who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax
I got
proposal.
it done, and you know what
And
happened?
you got it done.
Our economy boomed
And
like it's never
the
boomed.
economy
Okay,
is
Mr. President, Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation.
Yes.
not lower tax for the American people.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming, it turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do was turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy.
No, you didn't.
It wasn't booming. It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery.
Yep.
Wait, is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole.
No, it didn't.
Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse me, Chris.
Oh my
Number
God,
two.
nobody believes
Number
that.
three.
They said it would take, no, you were number two.
No.
Chris, they said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. My standard fare.
I'm the guy
He
that brought
totally
back
gave up
over
on manufacturing.
We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're gone.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not.
And they didn't come in like you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. And his trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate
Mexico.
your lunch, that 18%. China ate your lunch, Joe. And no wonder your son goes in and he takes out millions of dollars.
Yeah!
Millions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, so while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
Ouch.
None of that is true.
Really?
Mr. President,
It's
Mr. President, please.
totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
But wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice
He got
President.
$3.5 million.
that's
Ooh.
not true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President,
But, Mr.
it's an open discussion, please.
No,
It's a fact.
Well,
There's
you
no-
raised an issue, let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did Burisma make $183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
Mr. President,
Whoa!
Did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr. President, let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. And his position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
And the media.
By everybody. Well, by the media, by our allies, by the World Bank, by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even the people who testified under oath.
So let me ask you this.
Go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to you.
People under,
You got $3.5 million
he
from Moscow.
he testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh,
I did
really?
it
I don't know who
honorably.
they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
Go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't
Well,
know.
but here's the,
With you?
Go ahead, wait a minute, you get the final word.
well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me, this.
Wow!
Why did he deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, this family,
Of course you don't.
It's a fortune we're coming down and helping us with government.
and that's such a
Let him finish.
This is not about my family or his family, it's about your family. The American people, that's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
All right, that's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
It didn't take that.
Vice President, no.
Can I be honest? It's a very important
Try to be
question.
honest.
I split up.
No, the answer to the question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion of
That is absolutely not true.
Good job, Trump.
Gentlemen, I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to me, why should I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal. We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted
Moments, not minutes.
You can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more interrupting.
That's it. He just finished.
Well, less than you, sir, less than you have. Let's please continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago,
Oh, God.
very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president. President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for Black Americans
And he
than any
has.
president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the two of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole.
Can you hold my
America.
camera for a minute?
But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people looked like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. The young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president's ever said anything like that.
It is
Now, second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up the Bible.
Lying.
And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans.
Oh, please.
This man is a savior of African Americans.
Yes,
this man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look,
Oh, my
the fact
God.
is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African American community.
So, President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with
Did
racism?
a crime bill, 1994.
Right.
Where you call them super predators, African Americans, super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Jefferson.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time.
Yep.
Because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that. because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals. Total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump.
Wow.
I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because, you know what, if they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands, and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I'm going to return to the after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there's systemic injustice in this country, in education, in work, and in law enforcement, and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples, and when they occur, when we find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
What is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place? That is a peaceful protest. No, it's not. But you say it is.
I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory.
Racism.
Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist.
Thank you.
Because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else, and he would know.
What is radical about racial sensitivity training?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we would pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas, and frankly, very sick ideas.
Yes.
And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm
Yes.
not going to do that.
That's
I'm
right.
not going to allow that to happen. Great. We have to go back to the core values of this country.
Yes.
They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's a racist.
Oh, please.
I know a lot more about this.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color.
No.
In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism.
President Trump said.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division.
Yep.
There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you go to many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now. But the reason is that the Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order. You still haven't mentioned. Are you in favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow.
Are you in favor of law and order?
You asked a question, let him finish.
This is law
and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration. It's gone up on his watch. He has.
All right, Mr. President,
every record of the
Mr. President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America.
Yes, there has.
This summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic
Yes.
mayors. In fact, there have been equivalent spikes in Republican led
No.
Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is,
That's not a
this
Republican
really
city.
Party issue?
I think it's a party issue.
Yes, it is.
You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago?
Oh, Lord.
53 people were shot and 8 died shot.
Right.
If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone. And you would see problems like you've never seen.
A suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
Oh, please.
I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because he is refusing to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about the market, though, and in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means,
let me, if I might finish the question, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Oh,
look,
God.
what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be...
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what they're talking about.
That's exactly...
Defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law. He has no law enforcement.
That's not true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
not...
Really, who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you.
Oh! Oh!
We don't have time to do that.
Ah!
Gentlemen, I think I'm going to take back the moderator's role, and I want to get to another subject. which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent.
That was
In
good.
Portland, Oregon especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree, you talk about peaceful protests, many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now.
Oh.
Have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard?
Whoa.
Good
Good one.
Days and months of violence in Portland.
I don't hold public office now.
And you never will.
Anyone who commits it
But
should
you've
be
never
prosecuted.
called for the people, that's the leader.
Unbelievable.
You've never called for the leaders in Portland and
Holy crap.
to the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if you just stay out of the way.
Holy
The killer
crap.
down in the middle of the street, and they shot him. And for 3 days,
Holy crap.
the U.S. Marshals, they took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, you know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
Who said that?
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said.
She said that. And so here's the point. The point is that that's what he is keep trying to rile everything up.
Well, yeah, she
He
might.
doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline on the fire, constantly, at every single solitary
Okay,
fire.
and to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly
I have
criticized.
to answer his stuff.
You have
His statement?
repeatedly, you've been talking.
He made a statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to know, sir.
Let him answer.
I'd love to, and
You know, if you want to switch seats, we
Very
can
quickly.
We can do that, but
I'd
I'm
say that the National Guard would be over, there'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing
That's right.
extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists
Yes.
and militia groups and to say that
He's already done it.
need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland? Are you prepared to specifically do it?
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
What are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Then
peace.
do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Absolutely.
What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
Would
white
you like me to condemn
supremacists and white
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left. This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh! Holy crap.
We're moving on to the next
Everybody in that administration tells you the truth is that's a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
I have no idea.
Antifa is a dangerous radical.
Gentlemen, we're now moving on to the
Thank you.
They'll overthrow you.
When a president, I'm going to ask you a question. When the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax.
Yep.
And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe, and then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. He was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court judges, justices. That is a record the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I have so many judges? Because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like, you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president, you can't be a good vice president, but I want to thank you because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term, 300 judges. It's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? The presidents are uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided,
Oh, please.
more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused a recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head-to-head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got $1 million.
And by the way, my son,
Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
he never keeps his word.
Oh!
30 seconds.
Yes, sir, they have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy. I tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You at home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there was 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being
Not true.
and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes. And I resent.
Are you talking about Hunter? Are you talking about